Hey, Mike, you living out the ultimate male fantasy of bleeding out in the snow?
Yeah, and it feels good. Today on Grantham, we're going to be talking about a very interesting revolver. We have the Cottonmouth from Empire Tactical. Now, if you know anything about revolvers, this right here is the legendary Colt Python. These things are legendary for accuracy, for strength, and with some upgrades from Cottonmouth, we have a very interesting revolver. And for me, a 357 Magnum, which is what this is chambered in, is interesting. This harkens back to a more civilized time when lawmen carried a 357 and the shots were won. But you don't see revolvers used nearly as much anymore, probably due to the fact that, well, they're quite outclassed by a handgun that holds 17 rounds. So how does something like this hold up? How's the recoil? Does the muzzle brake actually help with 357 Magnum? Many questions answered today on Grantham as we talk about my Cottonmouth.
Yeah, I think this bit's pretty well played out.
Sorry. So before we get into that, we of course have to thank the biggest sponsor. The biggest sponsor of the channel is Primary Arms. If you're looking for great optics at a great price, you can get something like an Aimpoint T2, a T1. Get whatever you want, but they also make wonderful optics at incredible prices. Not only that, they sell literally everything. So whatever you may want, they got it for you. Go and check them out. We love them. Make sure you send an email, say, hey, it's past Christmas, which means what, Jeremy?
I have no idea where you're going with this.
You gotta make up something. Be like, oh yeah, that means it's Santa's blowout.
Oh, Santa's getting a blowout.
We're not saying that. Go check out Primary Arms. Guys, if you're looking to buy night vision, if you're looking to rent night vision network, the only M words that you can say, and you can check out everything. You can buy it, you can rent it, do whatever you need to make sure that you can LARP as hard as you could ever want to LARP. So go and check them out. Guys, if you want to get better at shooting, dry fire is the way to go. We recommend Mantis. Mantis turns your gun into a dry fire machine. It's very fun. The Blackbeard system, literally so much fun. I spent so much time training with it. It's a tool. Don't just rely on it, but it is a tool to help you become a better shooter. Finally, all ammunition is provided for by AAC. With all that being said, the Cottonmouth is actually pretty expensive. But you know what? Is it worth it? Find out. Jeremy, did you know that a lot of people are actually apparently a big fan of this car right here?
No, it makes sense why you brutalize it all the time.
Because people like it?
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. So guys, when we're talking about revolvers, we have to talk about the base model. So first thing we're going to talk about is about the Colt Python right here. John, what do you think of the Colt Python?
I like it. I mean, if I want a revolver, I'm going to want like the super classic look.
And now, if you don't know who we are, John right here is a former Ranger from 275. I am a former Air Force Special Warfare guy. John, from playing Call of Duty, I know that our generals carried Colt Pythons.
I mean, I used it out of the mystery box in Black Ops 1.
Hey, there you have it. So, the Colt Python is an excellently made revolver. Now, these have been made since 1955, and there was a gap, and there was some upgrades that have been made to the Python as production has continued. So this is a post-2005 manufactured Colt Python, a little bit different from the older ones, and yet still excellently made, and they are known for their tight lockup and their excellent accuracy. Now, this gun is phenomenal, but when we talk about something like this right here, obviously, we do have a different barrel length. We have a 4.25 barrel length compared to the 6-inch on the Colt Python. Does like an inch and 3/4 matter, John?
I mean, it depends what you're talking about, but yeah, for a revolver, a little bit.
So right here, we're gonna do a little bit of apples to oranges comparison. So we have this, we also have an older Astra 357. We're gonna compare them. How does the muzzle brake actually work? Are the upgrades to this actually good? Do they actually help the revolver overall? Today, we're going to test it fully on the range, and then we're going to go into autistic detail in the black screen. Let's get into it. Now, of course, we're all used to shooting 9mm, but it should be noted that the 357 is a very powerful cartridge. As you can see right here, you got a lot of power going on right there. The 357 is a good cartridge. It does perform well, but the first question that we have is, what is the recoil like? Does this actually tame the recoil? Now, we are comparing it to a 6-inch Python. There's a possibility that the 6 inches does it better than the 4.25. We're going to find out right now.
6 inches is too much, Mike.
Oh, is it?
Most would say that that's actually too much.
What's the average for a
almost
revolver?
Dangerous.
What's the average for a revolver?
Like 2 at most, dude.
You can do a lot with 2, Mike.
I believe it. I mean, I have a King Cobra, which is like a 2-inch 357.
Yeah, take it to yourself.
Let's go ahead and do the recoil test. We'll fire 3 rounds. Now we have a 4.25-inch Astra, which is another 357. This gun just old, so try that out. Oh, dude, you definitely feel that more. Yeah, you definitely feel that difference between the two. And that's about the same weight, so makes sense. Now, the really nice thing about having a comp on a revolver is you can have as much comp as you want and not have to worry about the functionality of the weapon. Compared to a typical semi-auto, like a tilting barrel, Browning design, it's going to require a lot of energy, and a comp will rob the weapon and the system of that energy needed to cycle it. With a revolver, that's not an issue. So because of that, you can really comp the hell out of these things. That's definitely true of the 357. And in fact, with an aggressive comp like we have right here, the hotter the ammo, the better it comps itself, which is very cool. I feel like Ryan Gosling, and I'm like literally me. That's what I feel like right now. Does that work?
Yeah, I mean, you're wearing the jacket, dude.
Does that make me Ryan Gosling? So right here, we have our target. We're gonna go ahead and do 6 rounds in it. So that's 357, that'll be the entire cylinder. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna see how quick we're gonna be able to do this and see how it controls itself. Okay, ready?
Ready.
Nice. All right, looks like my zero's a little high on that one. That would be a bad day, but pretty easy to control. Let's go ahead, let's try it one more time. I know my hold now, and we'll go a little lower. So right here is where we need Jerry Michalik or Lena Michalik or Caleb or somebody, because they do a lot of revolver shooting, and I do not do nearly as much. It's really weird with a revolver because you have a double action pull, and the double action pull on this is really nice. It's just, revolver's a little bit different. It's kind of a lost art. All right, you ready?
Ready.
Nice. All right, line break will get it to me. Nice, feels good. The revolvers are fun. You can see some guys really pushing it on the revolver, and I'm sure this could be pushed a little bit harder from somebody who shoots revolvers all the time, but I'm an okay shooter, and that felt pretty good, especially at the comp. That was very easy to control. So we've done a little bit of testing here. Next thing I want to check is going to be the velocity difference from a 6-inch to a 4.25 inch. Let's go ahead and try that out. Now, one of the nice things about revolvers, well, there's a few nice things, is that due to the fact that for the weapon to operate, the cylinder merely needs to turn and line up and the hammer needs to fall, that a lot of the close quarter shooting where you have problems with semi-autos, you don't have those with revolvers. So being really close, you can have it right up against your body and still be able to fire. And it's going to be no problem. So like the classic, like through the coat, you can do all of that, no problem, and you're not gonna have any issues with the gun jamming up.
You shot your nice coat?
It's gonna be patched, it's gonna look great.
Yeah.
So that is one of the nice things about revolvers, is you can fire them very close quarters. You can also press the muzzle right up against somebody and be able to fire. Now there are standoff devices on semi-autos, but your typical from the factory semi-auto could possibly, depending on how hard you push into somebody, come out of battery and not fire. Another nice thing is going to be different round types. Typically through semi-autos, there can be issues feeding, but due to the nature of revolvers where it simply lines up the cylinders, you don't have an issue with some odd types of sizing and bullet shapes. You have a lot of wad cutters, a lot of different types of shapes to rounds that you typically don't see that are run in semi-autos. So it's for that fact that you can run some very interesting ammo types. So one thing that we'll show you is a little bit of the performance that you can see out of the 357. Okay, first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna show you the performance of a soft point through gel. So right here, you see your pretty typical 9mm performance, but more importantly, what you see is you see how much depth we get. We have the full 12 inches of penetration. These are great for the ability to get right to the point of the body that they need to get to. Next thing we'll show you is just your typical flat nose. Okay, next up, just a straight flat nose. And so as you can see, we didn't have as much expansion on the flat nose, but we had pretty good performance all the way through. 357 is a man killer, and probably one of the coolest things about 357 is that for training, if you're low on any type of, funds, or you want to be able to shoot without as much recoil, you can actually use 38 Special with no problem and a lot less recoil. So right here we have 38 Special, just to show you that that's real. Same size, just less powder, which means a lot easier to fire, which you're going to see in just a moment here. And the nice thing is that 38 has been around for a very long time, so it is a very common cartridge to find. Pretty neat. You see how light that recoil was?
Yeah, for sure.
It's super light.
Clearly a difference.
Okay, so we've talked about the 357 and the Python, but they're known for their extreme accuracy. So the question is, how far can we push it? Okay, first thing we're gonna do is fire at 100 yards and see if we can make shot. Yeah, super easy. All right, 150. Okay, 150 looks pretty good right there. So, looks like as far as Revolver is concerned, you can really push it out with these Magnum rounds. And we have made shots out to about this distance with a 9mm. But the difference being 357 just hits a little bit harder. Isn't that right, Jeremy?
Yeah, it's got a little bit more ass.
So, this gun is pretty awesome so far. And one thing that we have to talk about too is how nice the trigger is. And like they have done a lot of hand fitting with these guns. They have stonewashed it. We have a lot of beautiful things on this gun. So we're on the range right now. Let's go ahead. Let's go into an older, more distinguished gray silver fox, Michael Jones, from tomorrow. And let's see what it looks like as we break it down extremely autistically in the black screen. This video is sponsored by IWA. So they realized there is a huge problem, and that was that there was no cool 37mm. They have imported the ML37, which is this guy right here, which is a European military grenade launcher. In this case, it is 37mm. It's being currently evaluated by the German military to replace the M320 for good reason, because it is side-loading, which allows you to use much larger munitions compared to the typical M203. They are also importing a lot of very cool munitions. First one that we have right here is a banger. Go ahead and fire that. It's actually pretty effective. A smoke long range. I hit the target, you see that? And look at that. It's putting off a good amount of smoke right there.
That's actually better than the military 40mm smoke.
Yeah, that's impressive. Next up, we're gonna be firing a flashbang at John. Do you have your pro on?
Absolutely.
Hopefully not. How was that?
I mean, I felt that concussion.
Nice, it's good. So right here, we have a 37mm to 26.5 flare. We pop that right in there. This allows us to use 26mm flares. Very cheap, very fun. We're not actually gonna fire it into the air because we're not in any type of civil distress. That allows you to use a lot of different things. This is a very versatile launcher. Go ahead and check them out. IWA, big thank you to them. Let's get back to the content.
We are now in the studio with a much more handsome and older version of myself. And we're gonna be talking about the Cottonmouth right here, my Cottonmouth. This has been a fun one to do, mostly because people at Empire are just phenomenal to work with. In addition to that, they've also made a gun for Post Malone. He does have the clone copy of this that has a very special inscription on that. But we'll wait till we do the review of his particular Cottonmouth, Post Malone's Cottonmouth, before we talk about that. But today we're going to be going into a little bit of autistic detail when it comes to this Cottonmouth right here. So in comparison, we have a factory Colt Python that is 6 inches. And then of course we have our nice little Astra, which is a 357 4 inches. And we do have to talk a little bit about the barrel length, because originally I called it a 425. However, we did correct that, but it is actually a 3-inch. So its performance is all the more impressive when compared to the 6 and the 4.25. So let's go ahead, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what makes this incredible. So first off, what is my relationship with Empire? They did send me the handgun in order to do a review. That being said, all ammunition is provided for by myself. I paid for it all. In addition to that, we've done plenty of reviews where companies have sent us firearms where our opinion isn't going to change simply because they sent us the firearm. This is a very typical arrangement within the review industry. So moving from there, the fact of the matter is that this comes in at around $2,100. That is a tough pill to swallow, because on its own, the Colt Python is a well-made and is a expensive revolver on its own. So when you buy the Cottonmouth right here, it comes with both the Colt Python and all the work that they do to it. Let's talk a little bit about what makes the Cottonmouth different and what might make it worth it to you. So first off, there is a different finish that is given to the Cottonmouth compared to the Colt Python. It is a stonewash finish. In addition to that, certain portions are blackened. They have a nitride finish that is added to them. And of course, we have this nice optic rail as well as the cage compensator optic rail all across the top right here. Now, compared to your typical Python, you do have some differences here, primarily in the stone wash finish, as well as within the Cerakoted black cylinder, controls, trigger, and of course, you have this really, I'd say, pretty two-toned look to the cage rail slash compensator right there. The compensator is stone washed as well. You compare this to your typical Colt Python, and we have our standard nickel finish and target sights, which looks very attractive, but there's something very steampunk-esque there's something very alluring about the Cottonmouth itself. It is just a cool looking firearm. So let's go ahead and let's talk about what they've done to it beyond there. So we're gonna start, as we always do, we're gonna go tip to butt of this gun right here, talk about what makes it great. My Navy guys are super excited, as they always are. So starting off the compensator, we really do have to talk about the compensator and how well it works. So due to the fact that you're not robbing any of the action of a semi-auto, you can compensate this weapon as much as you want. And as you can tell here, this compensator looks absolutely ridiculous. And in our shooting that we did, the 3-inch with the cage compensator absolutely outperformed both the 6-inch as well as the 4.25 without compensators. Now, obviously, with the compensator on the 3-inch, we have about the same length as a 4.25, and we do have some small loss of velocity. However, we have a much better compensated weapon in the fact that it stays on target much better than a 4.25 and a fairly good amount better than the 6-inch, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, 357 isn't a particularly hard recoiling cartridge. It's obviously more than what some of us might be used to, but it really does help to keep it down to make it easy to do those follow-up shots. Now, moving back from there, we of course have the cage optic rail as well as a lower rail for whatever your LARPing needs may be. Obviously on this, we do have a Surefire X300. You can put any type of IR laser aiming devices on the bottom here if you want to do night vision shooting, hunting. It's been described as Empire as bringing the revolver into the 21st or 22nd century for self-defense, hunting. I know they mostly talk about hunting, but conceivably, if you wanted, you could certainly carry this. That would be a really cool little piece of evidence in an evidence bag to be pulled out during a trial. Just saying. Now at the top here, we do have our optic rail. Obviously on this guy, we do have an aimpoint T1. Any type of optic is gonna work. If you want something ridiculous on there, you could. I find that the red dot works extremely well for a 357. Allows you to shoot well past 150 yards out to 200. And if you're a phenomenal shot with a very carefully hand-loaded round, you could probably go out much further. And I know people have taken these handguns pretty far. 357 is a very cool cartridge. Now, going from there, obviously a Colt Python in and of itself is a fairly accurate firearm. There's nothing that was done specifically to the barrel. Most of the work that you're seeing on these firearms was done internally. So there was a lot of work that was put into hand fitting, deburring, and making the action even smoother than it came from the factory. So all this leads to a very smooth firearm, even compared to the factory ones. The factory ones do feel really good, but when you pick up the Empire and you pull the trigger, it is both lighter as well as crisper. I do like the flat face on the Revolver. Obviously in single action, this thing is ridiculously light, but even in double action, that is extremely easy to pull that trigger and to reset it compared to our factory model right there. It just feels smoother through the entirety of the pull. So all these things lead to a, I would say, better fitting revolver that leads to a revolver that's going to last a very long time, that's going to hold accuracy for a very long time. Now, a quick note on Colt Pythons as well is if you're looking down the gun right here and you pull the trigger, you'll notice that the cylinder does rotate clockwise. Compare this to other models that are out there, and you'll notice that many of them rotate counterclockwise. Just a quick note on Colt Pythons, revolvers are an interesting little bunch when it comes to that rotation of the cylinder, how the lockup is, and what makes them so good. In terms of the Colts, they've been known for a wonderful lockup as soon as that trigger is prepped and in place, which leads to a very accurate firearm. Obviously on our cylinder release, it is pressed back. I prefer this much more to many other models that have a press forward, just because I found that under a recoil, they have a tendency to want to hit that little finger of yours, depending on your grip. So I find that that works really, really well. Now, from here, we're gonna get to our trigger. I know we pulled the trigger a little bit right here, but let's go ahead and let's do what we do best. Let's go set trigger together. So first off, we're gonna go ahead and feel into it. So we have about 2 millimeters of play before we hit our wall. That's a double action pull. So we have about 2 millimeters of play right there. Then we hit our double action pull. That is about a crisp, it's about a 6-pound pull from the single action, maybe 3 pounds. Feels wonderful. For a revolver trigger, that feels really good. Obviously, if you're used to not firing a double action, that can be a little weird at first, but it does feel good. We have to talk a little bit about the finish, about how good it looks. I think one thing that's often looked over is how attractive the firearm is, and the Cottonmouth just looks like an inherently attractive gun. It just looks very good. I've always been impressed with the looks behind it. Now, when we go down to the grips are your typical Colt grips. We do have a little bit of goon tape that they put on there to aid in it, but there's nothing really to write home about when it comes to the grips. And unfortunately, we actually had one of the little Colt emblems fall out of our grip when we're shooting it. Thank you, Colt. It's a Colt problem, not an Empire problem. But nonetheless, what we have here is a revolver that is hand-fitted, deburred, polished, with an excellent rail and compensator that brings this revolver into the 21st century. Obviously, there are many revolvers that already have some of these things on them, but few, I believe, look as wonderful as the Cottonmouth. Now, I will be the first to say, $2,100 for a revolver is a little bit crazy, but this is a revolver that looks very cool. This is not something that I'm going to recommend right off the bat. This is not something that I'm going to say you absolutely need to have for home defense or for hunting. However, if you're looking to fill out your collection with something that just looks cool and is fun and is going to turn heads at the range, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting the Cottonmouth. Just understand, like many other custom pistols, that the ability of it to hold value compared to just a stock model, I'm not sure, to be honest. However, it just looks awesome, and sometimes that is more than enough. And certainly compared to the factory models, it has a lot of advantages in terms of recoil control, in terms of fitment, trigger pull, and many other things. So as a whole, I would say this is very cool. This is hard to say it's a 100% buy, but that is where we're at with the Cottonmouth. Here's the thing, guys. You don't need this to be a good shooter. Make sure that you buy a firearm that you can then afford ammo with, and make sure you're shooting and that you're training, because that is what really matters. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching this video about my Cottonmouth. We'll talk more about Post Malones later. And as always, guys, stay looking cool, and final little bit of advice for you. A little bit of life advice. And that is going to be that time is your most valuable resource. Make sure you spend it wisely. It's something that you never get back, and you have a finite amount. You just don't know how much you have. Take care, ladies and gentlemen.
We're the replicant LARPers. Retirement it is. No witnesses.